All right, let's get right into it. James Comey's book, A Higher Loyalty, it's not your typical tell-all from a Washington insider. It's really about one single powerful idea. And that idea is this massive, high-stakes clash between two totally different ways of looking at loyalty. And this wasn't some abstract debate, right? This was a real conflict that blew up at the very top levels of power in the US.
So where does a book like this start? Washington, D.C.? Nope. Comey kicks things off with something totally unexpected. He hits you with this quote from a mobster, Sammy the Bull Gravano, and it is just jarring. It's a perfect, almost chilling way to set the stage for the whole book. Because right away you're asking, what's truth? What are lies? And what happens when loyalty to a person forces you to betray everything else?
So with that, let's call it mobster loyalty as the backdrop. Comey lays out his own principle, the thing he believes is the foundation, the absolute bedrock of any kind of ethical leadership. And for Comey, you see, this isn't just some feel-good, abstract concept. He argues it's absolutely non-negotiable if you want a democracy that actually works. He's saying that institutions, like the DOJ and the FBI, they have to be loyal to something bigger than one person. It doesn't matter if that person is a president or a mob boss. The ultimate authority, the final say, has to be the truth and the rule of law, period. And this idea, for him, wasn't just something he came up with in an office. He makes the case that this principle was forged in fire, It was tested in the real world. And it all started way back when he was a young prosecutor going after one of the most powerful criminal outfits in the country. So he's prosecuting the Mafia, right? A world he literally calls a life of lies. And what he found was fascinating. On paper, they had all these rules, this code of honor. But in reality, totally worthless. The promises meant nothing. The only rule that actually mattered was loyalty to the boss. You could break any of the other rules, no problem. But betray the boss? That was it for you. This gave him this crystal clear first-hand look at just how corrupting that kind of personal loyalty can be. Okay, so fast forward a bunch of years. That lesson he learned from the mob, it's about to be put to the ultimate test. We're talking two incredibly intense, high-stakes situations where he had to defend this idea of a higher loyalty against massive political pressure, and not just from one side, but from both. All right, this next part sounds like something straight out of a movie. Seriously, it's 2004. Comey gets this frantic call. President Bush's top aides are on their way to the hospital right now to pressure the Attorney General, John Ashcroft, who is incredibly sick, into signing off on something. So what does Comey do? He literally races them there, lights and sirens, to physically get between them. He describes standing there like a guard as these officials try to lean on a heavily medicated Ashcroft. And then, in this just unbelievable moment, Ashcroft, barely conscious, actually lifts his head up and defends the Department of Justice's position. Comey paints this as the ultimate example of his principle in action, a moment where loyalty to the institution had to be physically defended from raw executive power. Now, let's jump forward 12 years to an even bigger, more public test. It's October 2016, just days before the presidential election. The FBI finds a whole new batch of emails that might be relevant to the Hillary Clinton investigation, which they had already closed. And Comey presents this as a truly impossible choice. Option 1, speak up. Tell Congress what's going on. The risk? You'll be accused of meddling in the election. Option 2, conceal it. Follow the usual protocols, stay quiet, and deal with it after the election. But the risk there? If it leaks later that the FBI sat on this information, public trust could be completely shattered. So, as he puts it, he saw the choice not as good versus bad, but as really bad versus catastrophic. But all this abstract conflict between these two kinds of loyalty, it's all about to get very, very personal. And that brings us to what is really the climax of the entire book. A private, one-on-one dinner with the new president, Donald Trump. This is where the quiet theme of the book gets spoken out loud and clear.
Right there, across the dinner table, Comey says President Trump tells him this, a direct demand. This is the moment where that personal, almost mob boss-style loyalty is put on the table for the director of the FBI. The line is officially being drawn.
And Comey's reply? He doesn't say yes. He doesn't offer loyalty, at least not in the way it was just demanded. Instead, he offers honesty. He's basically spelling out his commitment to that higher loyalty we've been talking about, loyalty to the truth, right to the president's face. It's a direct counteroffer, a moment of crystal clear opposition. But then there's this little twist. Trump's reply's honest loyalty. And Comey writes about this moment as feeling like they'd just shaken hands on a deal, but then realizing they were speaking two different languages. They were using the same words to mean polar opposite things. For Trump, honest loyalty seems to mean, okay, great, you'll be loyal to me and you won't lie about it. But for Comey, it meant his loyalty was to honesty itself. And this is really the heart of the whole book, right? Looking back on that dinner, Comey just lays out the fundamental difference between these two views on leadership. On one hand, you have the loyalty a boss demands. It's personal, it's about them. On the other hand, you have what he calls ethical leadership, which serves bigger ideas like truth and justice. It's not about being loyal to a person. It's about protecting the institutions that are supposed to serve everybody. So where does all this lead? What's the fallout from this fundamental disagreement? Well, Comey reflects on what happened next, and he ends on a note that's actually, surprisingly, optimistic. He wraps it all up with this really powerful metaphor of a forest fire. I mean, after everything he's laid out, you'd think he'd be pretty downbeat, but he's not. He argues that, yeah, recent events have been like a fire, and they've been painful, burning down old norms and traditions. But what do fires do? They also clear out the underbrush and make way for new growth. He suggests the fire has forced everyone to focus again on things like truth and ethics and why our institutions matter, sparking a conversation he thinks we needed to have for a long, long time. And in the end, the book really leaves you with one big question. And it's not just about James Comey or politics, it's a question for all of us about what we expect from any leader, in government, at our jobs, in our own communities. When things get tough and loyalties are tested, who or what should they ultimately serve? The person in charge or the principle they're supposed to stand for?